Have you ever stood in the rain, waiting for someone who never came, only to have your entire life change because a stranger chose to stop? Today, I'm going to tell you the unforgettable true story of Emma Clark, a young woman whose heart was shattered on the worst night of her life. Until Adrian Blackwood, a billionaire with secrets of his own, appeared like a storm breaking through darkness and showed her what it truly means to be seen, valued, and loved in ways she never imagined possible. The rain came down in sheets, cold and relentless, turning the city streets into rivers of neon reflections. Emma Clark stood beneath the inadequate overhang of the restaurant entrance, arms wrapped around herself, shivering despite her coat. Her carefully curled hair, the result of 2 hours of preparation, now hung in wet strands against her cheeks. The mascara she'd applied so meticulously had begun to smudge beneath her eyes, dark streaks she could feel but couldn't see. She checked her phone again, 43 minutes. That's how long she'd been waiting. The text message glared back at her, time-stamped at 6:47 p.m. "Running late, babe. Be there soon. Order without me if you want." That had been at 7 o'clock. It was now 7:43. The reservation under his name, Marcus Henley, had already been given away. She de-watched the hostess, a polished blonde in a sleek black dress, glance at her with increasing pity every time she checked the list. Finally, 10 minutes ago, the woman had approached with an apologetic smile that somehow felt worse than annoyance would have. "Miss, I'm sorry, but we've had to release your table. We have a waiting list and without both parties present." She'd trailed off, the rest unnecessary. Emma had nodded, throat tight, and stepped back outside to wait under the overhang. Now, as the rain intensified and the October wind cut through her thin coat, Emma felt something crack inside her chest. Not surprise, this wasn't the first time Marcus had done this. But tonight was different. Tonight was their anniversary. 2 years together, and she'd actually believed him when he said this dinner was important to him, that he'd made special plans, that she mattered. A couple hurried past her into the restaurant, laughing, the man's hand protective on the woman's back as he held an umbrella over them both. Emma watched them disappear through the golden glow of the entrance and felt the crack widen into something that hurt to breathe around. Her phone buzzed. Hope flared, stupid, desperate hope, and she fumbled to unlock the screen with numb fingers. "Marcus, something came up at work. Can we reschedule? Sorry, Em." No explanation. No apology that felt real. No acknowledgement that she'd been standing in the rain for nearly an hour. Just 7 words and an abbreviation of her name that somehow made it worse, like he couldn't even be bothered to type the extra letter. Emma stared at the message until the screen blurred. She wasn't sure if it was tears or rain on her face anymore. Around her, the city moved on, taxis splashing through puddles, pedestrians rushing beneath umbrellas, the warm light of restaurants and bars spilling onto wet sidewalks. Everyone had somewhere to be, everyone except her. She should call a cab, should go home, take a hot shower, put on pajamas, and pretend this night never happened. But her feet wouldn't move. She stood there, paralyzed by humiliation and heartbreak, watching her carefully planned evening dissolve like her reflection in the rain-soaked pavement. "Excuse me." The voice came from behind her, low and smooth, with an accent she couldn't quite place. British, maybe, but softened by time spent elsewhere. Emma didn't turn around. She didn't have the energy to move aside for another couple eager to escape the weather. "Miss, are you all right?" This time, the concern in the voice registered. Emma swiped at her face with the back of her hand and turned slowly. The man standing 3 feet away was not what she expected. He was tall, tall enough that she had to tilt her head back slightly even in her heels, with dark hair that the rain had swept back from a face that belonged in magazines. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with deliberate stubble, and eyes that were an unusual shade of gray, like storm clouds backlit by sun. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, the kind of tailoring that didn't come off a rack, and despite the rain, he looked entirely composed except for the slight dampness darkening his shoulders. What struck Emma most, though, was the expression on his face. Genuine concern, untouched by the wariness most city strangers carried. He held an umbrella, though he wasn't fully beneath it himself, as if he'd been about to enter the restaurant when he'd noticed her. I'm fine, Emma said automatically, her voice hoarse. Thank you. The man's eyes, gray, she confirmed, but with flecks of blue that caught the light, swept over her slowly. Not in the assessing way men sometimes looked at women, calculating attraction or dismissal, but with the thorough attention of someone reading a situation. He saw her ruined hair, her smudged makeup, the way she was shivering. He saw the phone still clutched in her hand, screen dark now. He saw everything, and something in his expression shifted. "Forgive me," he said quietly, "but you don't look fine." Emma's throat tightened. Kindness, she was learning, was harder to bear than indifference. "Really, I'm okay. I was just waiting for someone, but plans changed." "How long have you been waiting?" The question was gentle, but it landed like a blow. Emma's eyes burned. "Not long," she lied. The man was quiet for a moment, rain drumming on the umbrella stretched above him. When he spoke again, his voice carried something that made Emma's chest ache, anger but not directed at her. "Someone left you standing in the rain." It wasn't a question. Emma looked away, unable to hold his gaze. The shame was too much, the humiliation of being seen this way by a stranger who probably had never waited for anyone in his life. "It's fine," she whispered. "It happens." "It shouldn't." 2 words, but they cut through Emma's defenses like nothing else could have. She looked back at him, startled, and found his expression had hardened into something fierce. "No one should treat you like this," he continued, voice low but intense. "Making you wait in the cold and rain as if your time, your dignity means nothing." He paused, jaw tightening. "It's unacceptable." Emma's breath caught. She didn't know this man, didn't know his name or why he cared enough to stop when dozens of others had walked past her without a glance. But the conviction in his voice, the way he looked at her as if she mattered, as if this small cruelty done to her was a personal offense, it broke something open inside her. "I should go," she managed, blinking against the tears threatening to spill over. "Thank you for stopping." She turned toward the curb, intending to hail a cab, but his next words stopped her. "Have you eaten?" Emma froze. Slowly she looked back. "What?" The man stepped closer, angling the umbrella so it covered them both. Up close she could see the fine weave of his suit, catch the subtle scent of expensive cologne, something woodsy and clean, and notice the way rain drops clung to his dark lashes. "I have a reservation here," he said, gesturing to the restaurant behind them. "I was dining alone, which I find tedious at the best of times. Would you join me?" Emma's heart stuttered. I couldn't, I don't even know you." "Adrian Blackwood," he said immediately, extending his free hand. "And you are?" She hesitated, then placed her cold hand in his warm one. His grip was firm, steady, and sent an unexpected jolt through her. "Emma Clark." "Emma," he repeated, and the way he said her full name with attention and respect was such a contrast to Marcus's careless M that she almost started crying again. "You've had your evening ruined by someone who didn't deserve your time. Let me salvage what's left of it. No expectations, no obligations, just dinner and decent conversation with someone who actually showed up." The last part was said with a hint of dry humor that surprised a sound from Emma. Not quite a laugh, but close. She should say no. Every rational instinct told her not to accept dinner invitations from strange men, no matter how kind they seemed or how expensive their suits were. But as she stood there, dripping and heartbroken, looking up at this man who had stopped his evening to care about hers, Emma found she didn't want to be rational. She didn't want to go home to her empty apartment and Marcus's inevitable excuses. She wanted, just for one night, to feel like someone's priority. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Yes, thank you." Adrian's smile transformed his face, softening the aristocratic features into something almost boyish. "Good," he said simply. Then, with old-fashioned courtesy that made Emma's heart flutter, he offered his arm. "Shall we?" Emma slipped her hand into the crook of his elbow, and together they walked toward the restaurant entrance. Through the golden light and warmth, into a night that would change everything. The hostess who had pitied Emma earlier did a visible double-take when they entered. Her eyes widened as she took in Adrian, then darted to Emma with new assessment, as if recalculating her worth based on her companion. "Mr. Blackwood," the woman said quickly, her professional smile now genuine and eager. "Your table is ready, sir, right this way." Adrian didn't acknowledge the shift in her demeanor. He simply guided Emma forward, his hand moving from her elbow to the small of her back. A light touch, barely there, but grounding. She was aware of the other diners glancing up as they passed, aware of the whispers that followed Adrian's presence like a wake behind a boat. They were led to a corner table, private and softly lit by candles flickering in crystal holders. The booth was upholstered in deep burgundy leather, and through the nearby window, the rain-soaked city glittered like a world separate from this warm, insulated space. A waiter materialized instantly, pulling out Emma's chair with a flourish. She sat, hyper-aware of her disheveled appearance, her damp coat, her ruined makeup. Next to Adrian's composed elegance, she felt like a drowned cat. "Would you like to freshen up?" Adrian asked quietly, as if reading her thoughts. There was no judgment in the question, only consideration. "Take your time, I'm not going anywhere." The simple promise, "I'm not going anywhere," hit Emma harder than it should have. She nodded gratefully and excused herself to the restroom. The ladies' room was all marble and gold fixtures, softly lit and smelling of expensive soap. Emma stared at her reflection and winced. Her mascara had created dark smudges beneath her eyes, her hair hung in damp tangles, and her dress, the burgundy sheath she'd chosen so carefully because Marcus once said he liked her in red, was wrinkled and water-stained. She cleaned up as best she could, wiping away the smudged makeup with damp paper towels, finger-combing her hair until it fell in somewhat acceptable waves around her shoulders. Without makeup, her face looked young and vulnerable, her hazel eyes too large, her mouth too uncertain. But at least she no longer looked like a raccoon. When she returned to the table, Adrian actually stood, something Marcus had never done, and waited until she was seated before settling back into his chair. The gesture was so unexpected, so courtly, that Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Better?" he asked, eyes kind. "A little less drowned," Emma admitted, managing a small smile. "Though I'm sure I'm violating about 6 dress codes right now." Adrian's expression turned serious. "You look beautiful." The words were simple, direct, and said with such matter-of-fact certainty that Emma couldn't dismiss them as empty flattery. She looked away, flustered, and found the waiter approaching with menus and a wine list. "Would you prefer white or red?" Adrian asked her. "Whatever you're having is fine." He studied her for a moment, then turned to the waiter. "We'll start with a bottle of the 2015 Chateauneuf du Pape and bring the lady a glass of champagne while we decide on dinner." The waiter nodded and disappeared. Emma blinked. "You didn't have to." "You've had a terrible evening," Adrian interrupted gently. "Champagne helps, it's a scientific fact." Despite everything, Emma felt a real smile tug at her lips. "Is it?" "Absolutely, I read it somewhere authoritative." His eyes glinted with humor. "Possibly on a wine bottle." Emma laughed, actually laughed, and the sound felt strange and wonderful after the past hour of misery. Adrian smiled in response, and she noticed the way it crinkled the corners of his eyes, making him seem less intimidating and more real. The champagne arrived in a delicate flute, bubbles rising in golden streams. Emma took a sip and felt the cold, crisp liquid settle her nerves. When she set the glass down, she found Adrian watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Thank you," she said softly. "For this, you didn't have to be kind to a stranger having a breakdown on the sidewalk." "You weren't having a breakdown," Adrian said. "You were having a justified emotional response to being treated badly." He paused, fingers tracing the stem of his water glass. "And you're not a stranger anymore. You're Emma Clark, who has excellent taste in dresses and terrible taste in people who don't appreciate her." The words were light, but there was an edge beneath them that made Emma think Adrian's anger on her behalf hadn't entirely faded. She swallowed, choosing her next words carefully. "You don't know anything about me or my situation." "Then tell me," Adrian said simply. "Or don't. We can talk about the weather or literature or why this restaurant's bread service is criminally overrated." He gestured to the basket a server had placed between them. "But if you want to talk about what happened tonight, I'm listening." Emma looked at him, this strange, magnetic man who had appeared out of nowhere and upended her terrible evening, and made a decision. "His name is Marcus," she began, voice barely above a whisper. "We've been together 2 years. Tonight was our anniversary." Adrian's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, letting her continue. "He's done this before, not shown up or shown up late with excuses, but I always told myself he was busy, that his work was demanding, that I was being too sensitive." Emma's hands twisted in her lap. "Tonight I stood in the rain for almost an hour, and when he finally texted, it was 7 words. 'Something came up at work. Can we reschedule?'" "No apology," Adrian said quietly. "Oh, there was one. Sorry, Em," like an afterthought. Emma blinked back tears. "The worst part is I'm not even surprised. I'm just tired of being someone's afterthought." Silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken things. When Adrian finally spoke, his voice was rough with barely contained anger. "Emma, I don't know you well, and I don't know this Marcus at all. But I know this. Anyone who makes you wait in the rain, who reduces your worth to an abbreviation and an afterthought, is a fool who doesn't deserve another second of your time." Emma's breath caught. The fierce conviction in his voice, the way he leaned forward as if his next words were the most important he'd ever say, made her heart pound. "You deserve someone who shows up," Adrian continued. "Who keeps their promises, who looks at you the way—" He stopped abruptly, something flickering in his eyes. Then softer. "Who looks at you the way you deserve to be seen." The weight of his gaze was almost too much. Emma felt exposed, vulnerable, but also, strangely, safe. This man, this stranger, saw her pain and didn't dismiss it or tell her to get over it. He validated it, defended it, as if her feelings mattered as much as anyone's. "I don't even know why I stayed with him this long," Emma confessed, the champagne and Adrian's kindness loosening the words she'd kept locked away. "My friends warned me. My sister couldn't stand him, but I kept thinking if I just tried harder, was more understanding, more flexible." She trailed off, the familiar shame rising. "Love shouldn't require you to diminish yourself," Adrian said quietly. "It should expand you, celebrate you, make you feel like the most important person in the world. Anything less is settling, and you, Emma Clark, should never settle." Tears pricked Emma's eyes again, but this time they weren't tears of humiliation. They were tears of recognition, of hearing truths she'd been too afraid to acknowledge. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "How can you be so sure?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes searching hers. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of old pain. "Because I know what it's like to be with someone who makes you feel invisible, who takes and takes until you've given away pieces of yourself you can't get back." His jaw tightened. "I wouldn't wish that on anyone, especially not someone like you." "Someone like me." "Someone real," Adrian said simply. "Someone who still believes in showing up and trying and caring. That's rare, trust me." Before Emma could respond, the waiter returned with the wine and their menus. Adrian ordered for both of them after asking Emma's preferences. The seared duck breast for him, wild mushroom risotto for her, and the waiter disappeared again, leaving them in their candle-lit cocoon. Emma took another sip of champagne, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversation around them, but their corner felt removed from it all, a separate world where time moved differently. "Tell me about you," Emma said, needing to shift the focus away from her own heartbreak. "Adrian Blackwood, what brings a man who orders wine that probably costs more than my rent to a dinner alone on a Friday night?" Something shuddered in Adrian's expression, a brief flicker of guardedness. Then it smoothed into a wry smile. "Work brings me here. I'm in the city for a few weeks overseeing an acquisition." "An acquisition," Emma repeated. "That sounds very corporate and intimidating." "It's duller than it sounds," Adrian assured her. "A great deal of paperwork and meetings with lawyers who charge by the minute to say things in 20 words that could be said in 5. Emma smiled despite herself. "What kind of business are you in?" "Development, real estate mostly, though we've branched into tech in recent years." He said it casually, but Emma's mind snagged on the we. Not the company or my firm, but we, as if he was part of something larger and more personal. And you do this everywhere, travel for work. London primarily, but New York, Hong Kong, Dubai, wherever opportunities arise. Adrian's expression was carefully neutral, but Emma sensed there was more he wasn't saying. It keeps life interesting, though I'll admit dining alone in unfamiliar cities loses its charm after a while. Is that why you invited me? Emma asked, then immediately regretted the question. It sounded like she was fishing for reassurance, for confirmation that she was special somehow. But Adrian didn't dodge it. He met her eyes directly, and his voice was serious when he answered. I invited you because you were standing in the rain, heartbroken and alone, and something in me couldn't walk past that, couldn't walk past you. He paused. Call it instinct, call it fate, call it whatever you like. But when I saw you, I knew I had to stop. Emma's pulse quickened. There was something in the way he looked at her, something that made her feel like the only person in the room, the city, the world. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. That's very romantic, she said, trying to lighten the intensity, for someone who just met me 20 minutes ago. Adrian's smile was slight, knowing. Romance isn't about time, it's about attention, and I'm very good at paying attention. The food arrived then, saving Emma from having to respond. The risotto was perfect, creamy and earthy, the mushrooms tender and fragrant. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, aware of Adrian watching her with an expression that made heat pool in her stomach. Good, he asked. Incredible, Emma admitted, though I feel like I should be eating this somewhere that doesn't have water stains on my dress. The dress is perfect, you're perfect. Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact, as if he was commenting on the weather. Stop worrying about how you look, I promise no one is judging you. You're just saying that to be nice. I'm saying it because it's true. Adrian set down his fork, his full attention on her. Emma, you've spent the evening apologizing for existing, for taking up space, for not meeting some invisible standard you think you're failing. Stop. You're here, that's enough. The words hit like a key turning in a lock. Emma felt something shift inside her, some tight knot of anxiety loosening just a fraction. When was the last time someone had told her she was enough? When had Marcus ever made her feel like her presence was wanted, valued enough? You're dangerous, Emma said softly, surprising herself. Adrian's eyebrows rose. Dangerous. You say things that make me want to believe them. She looked down at her risotto, unable to hold his gaze. That's dangerous for someone like me. Someone like you, Adrian repeated slowly. You keep saying that, what does it mean? Emma was quiet for a long moment, searching for the right words. Someone who's already too good at convincing herself that not enough is all she deserves. When she finally looked up, the expression on Adrian's face made her breath catch. It was fierce and tender at once, protective and pained, as if her words had physically hurt him. Then let me convince you otherwise, he said quietly. At least for tonight, let me show you what it feels like to be someone's priority. Emma's heart stuttered. The proposition was innocent, just dinner, just conversation, but the undercurrent was anything but. There was a promise in Adrian's words, an invitation to step out of her small, careful life and into something brighter and more dangerous. Why, the question escaped before she could stop it. Why do you care? Adrian was silent for so long Emma thought he wouldn't answer. Then slowly he spoke. 5 years ago, I was engaged to a woman named Victoria, beautiful, intelligent, from the right family, everything looked perfect on paper. His voice was distant, remembering. But she didn't see me. She saw what I represented, the lifestyle, the status, the access to wealth and power. I was a means to an end. Emma's chest tightened. What happened? I realized I was drowning trying to be what she wanted. And when I finally ended it, when I walked away from the engagement everyone expected, she didn't fight for me. She fought for the wedding, for the ring, for the future she'd planned. Adrian's jaw tightened. But not for me. Never for me. I'm sorry, Emma whispered. Adrian shook his head. Don't be. It taught me something important. I'd rather be alone than invisible. His eyes found hers intense and burning. So when I see someone else being treated as if they're invisible, as if they don't matter, yes, I care, because I know exactly how that feels. The vulnerability in his confession shook Emma to her core. This powerful, composed man with his perfect suit and commanding presence had been where she was, waiting for someone who never truly showed up. To survivors, Emma said softly, raising her champagne glass. Adrian's expression softened. He lifted his wine glass and touched it gently to hers. To survivors, he echoed, and to new beginnings. They drank, eyes locked, and Emma felt something shift between them. Some invisible line crossed. They weren't strangers anymore. They were two people who had survived being diminished by those who should have elevated them, finding unexpected recognition in each other's wounds. As the evening wore on, the conversation flowed more easily. Adrian asked about her work. She was a junior editor at a small publishing house, a job she loved despite the terrible pay, and listened with genuine interest when she described the manuscripts she was currently reading, the authors she admired, the dream of one day editing a book that mattered. "You light up when you talk about it," Adrian observed, a small smile playing at his lips. "Your whole face changes." Emma flushed. "I'm probably boring you with details about comma placement and narrative structure." "Not even slightly," Adrian said. "It's refreshing to hear someone talk about work with passion instead of cynicism. Most people I know see their jobs as necessary evils, means to an end. You actually care." "Don't you care about your work?" Emma asked. Adrian considered this, swirling the wine in his glass. "I care about building things, creating something that lasts, but the business itself," he shrugged. "It's complicated. My father built the company from nothing, turned it into an empire. When he died, I inherited the throne, so to speak. Sometimes I'm not sure where his dream ends and mine begins." The admission was so honest, so raw, that Emma impulsively reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "That sounds like a heavy burden." Adrian looked down at their joined hands, then slowly turned his palm up to lace his fingers through hers. His grip was warm, solid, and sent electricity racing up Emma's arm. "It is," he said quietly. "But right now, in this moment, it feels very far away." They sat like that for a long moment, hands entwined across the table, the rest of the restaurant fading into white noise. Emma's heart pounded so loudly she was certain Adrian could hear it. This was insane. She met this man barely 2 hours ago, and yet holding his hand felt more intimate, more right than 2 years of being with Marcus ever had. "Emma," Adrian said, his voice rough, "I need to tell you something." "Okay," Emma whispered, suddenly afraid of what he might say. Was this the moment he revealed he was married? That this was just charity, a kind gesture for a pathetic woman he'd found crying in the rain? But what he said was, "I want to see you again." Emma's breath caught. "What?" "Tomorrow, the next day, however many days I have left in this city." Adrian's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, the touch sending shivers through her. "I know this is fast. I know you're probably not in a place to think about." He stopped, jaw tightening. "But I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the moment I saw you standing in that rain, and I want more time, more conversations, more of this." Emma's mind raced. This was crazy. She should say no, should take time to process the end of her relationship with Marcus, should be rational and careful and smart. But when she looked at Adrian, at the hope and uncertainty in his eyes, the vulnerability beneath his composed exterior, rationality seemed vastly overrated. "Yes," she heard herself say. "Yes, I want that too." Adrian's smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, a gesture so old-fashioned and intimate that Emma felt her stomach flip. "Tomorrow, then, I'll pick you up at 7. "You don't know where I live," Emma pointed out, dazed. "Then you'll have to tell me." Adrian's eyes danced with humor. "Unless you want me searching the entire city. Fair warning, I'm very persistent when I want something." Emma laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. Years, maybe. That sounds vaguely ominous. "It should," Adrian said, his tone playful but his eyes serious. "Because I always get what I want, and Emma Clark, I want you." The declaration hung in the air between them, heavy with promise and possibility. Emma knew she should be cautious, should protect her already battered heart. But looking at Adrian, at this impossible man who had appeared out of nowhere and made her feel seen for the first time in so long, caution felt like cowardice. "Then I guess you'll have to prove you're worth the risk," Emma said softly. Adrian's smile turned wicked. Challenge accepted. They stayed until the restaurant began closing, reluctant to let the evening end. When the waiter finally approached with the check, Emma reached for her purse, but Adrian stopped her with a gentle hand on her wrist. "This is on me," he said firmly. "And before you argue, consider, you've given me the best evening I've had in months. Let me thank you properly." Emma wanted to protest. The amount on the bill which she'd glimpsed was astronomical, but the sincerity in Adrian's eyes stopped her. "Thank you," she said instead, "for everything, not just dinner." "The pleasure was entirely mine." Adrian stood and offered his hand. "Now let me get you home, it's still raining." Outside, the storm had softened to a steady drizzle. Adrian's driver pulled up in a sleek black car that looked like it cost more than Emma's entire yearly salary. The driver, a distinguished older man with kind eyes, held the door open with a respectful nod. "This is James," Adrian introduced. "He's been driving me into trouble and out of it for 10 years. "Only the out of it part recently, sir," James said with a perfectly straight face, and Emma giggled. She gave James her address, and they pulled away from the curb into the rain-slicked streets. Inside the car, the world was hushed leather and soft lighting. Adrian sat close enough that Emma could feel the heat of him, but he didn't crowd her, didn't assume anything. "Thank you again," Emma said as they drove through the city. "I know I keep saying it, but—" "Emma," Adrian turned to face her, his expression serious. "You don't have to thank me for basic human decency. You deserved better tonight. You deserve better in general." He paused, then added softly, "I hope you'll let me show you what better looks like." Emma's throat tightened with emotion. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They rode in comfortable silence until James pulled up in front of Emma's modest apartment building. It was a far cry from the gleaming high-rises Adrian probably stayed in, but he didn't so much as blink at the peeling paint or the flickering streetlight. "I'll walk you to your door," Adrian said, already opening his door. "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to, I want to." His tone was gentle but firm. "Humor me." They walked up the 2 flights of stairs to Emma's apartment, their footsteps echoing in the stairwell. At her door, Emma fumbled with her keys, suddenly nervous. This was the moment, the end of the night, the decision point. She could say good night and close the door, keep this as a magical anomaly, a beautiful detour from her regular life, or she could be brave. She turned to find Adrian watching her with an intensity that made her knees weak. He stood close, but not too close, giving her space to breathe, to choose. "Tomorrow," Emma said, her voice barely a whisper. 7 o'clock. Adrian's smile was slow and warm. "I'll be here, and Emma—" He reached out and gently tucked a strand of damp hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "Wear whatever you want. You're beautiful exactly as you are." Before Emma could respond, Adrian leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. Chaste, respectful, and yet somehow more intimate than any kiss she'd ever shared with Marcus. She felt it all the way to her toes. "Good night, Emma Clark," Adrian murmured against her skin. "Sleep well." Then he was walking away, down the stairs, leaving Emma standing at her door with her heart racing and her mind spinning. She unlocked her apartment in a daze and stepped inside, closing the door and leaning against it. Her phone buzzed, Marcus probably with more excuses, but when she checked, it was an unknown number. Already counting down the hours until tomorrow. Adrian. Emma smiled, a real smile that felt like sunshine breaking through clouds. She saved the number and typed back, "Me too." As she got ready for bed, washing away the last of her ruined makeup and slipping into soft pajamas, Emma replayed the entire evening. The rain, the humiliation, the way Adrian had appeared like something out of a story. The dinner, the conversation, the way he'd looked at her like she was the only person who mattered. She knew this was crazy, knew she was probably setting herself up for another heartbreak, but as she climbed into bed and stared at Adrian's text message glowing on her phone, Emma realized she didn't care. For the first time in years, she felt alive, seen, valued. And she wasn't going to apologize for that, not anymore. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. The morning light filtered through Emma's curtains, gentle and golden, nothing like the harsh rain of the night before. She woke slowly, disoriented, until the memories flooded back. Marcus standing her up, Adrian stopping dinner, the kiss on her forehead that still seemed to tingle hours later. Emma grabbed her phone from the nightstand. 7:30 a.m., and already there were messages waiting. Marcus, hey babe, really sorry about last night. Make it up to you this weekend. Dinner at your place. The casualness of it, the assumption that she'd just accept his non-apology and cook for him, made Emma's stomach turn. Before last night, she would have responded immediately, eager to smooth things over, to make him happy even at the expense of her own dignity. Now she stared at the message and felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, just a vast, empty recognition that she'd wasted 2 years on someone who would never see her. She deleted the message without responding. The next text was from her sister, Lily. Lily, how did anniversary dinner go? Please tell me Marcus didn't screw it up. Emma smiled sadly and typed, he didn't show, but something else happened. Call you later. The response was immediate. What? Calling you in 5 minutes. Before Lily could make good on that threat, Emma saw the third message, from Adrian. Adrian, good morning. I hope you slept well. Still very much looking forward to tonight. If you have any preferences for where we go, I'm open to suggestions. Otherwise, I have a few ideas. A. The formality of it, signing with just his initial, asking for her input, made Emma's chest warm. She started typing a response, deleted it, started again. Everything sounded too eager or too casual or too something. Finally, she settled on, good morning, slept better than I have in a while, surprise me with dinner, I trust your judgment. She hit send before she could overthink it, then immediately wondered if I trust your judgment was too much too fast. But Adrian's response came within seconds. Adrian, trust is earned. I intend to prove myself worthy of it. See you at 7. Wear something comfortable, we're going somewhere special. Emma was still staring at her phone, smiling like an idiot when it rang. Lily, of course. Explain, her sister demanded the moment Emma answered. Marcus didn't show on your anniversary, and something else happened. Emma Clark, you'd better start talking. So Emma did. She told Lily everything. The rain, the waiting, Marcus's pathetic text, and then Adrian. The stranger who stopped, who took her to dinner, who made her feel like she mattered. She left out the more intense parts, the things Adrian had said that had carved themselves into her heart, but even the bare facts were enough to make Lily whistle. Okay, so let me get this straight. A gorgeous, wealthy stranger saw you crying in the rain, invited you to dinner, treated you like a queen, and asked to see you again. Lily paused. Emma, this is either a fairy tale or the beginning of a true crime podcast. Lily, Emma laughed despite herself. I'm serious. Have you Googled him? Adrian Blackwood could be a serial killer's alias. He's not a serial killer, Emma said, then hesitated. I mean, I don't think he is. Google him right now. I'm waiting. With a sigh, Emma switched to speakerphone and opened a browser. She typed Adrian Blackwood and watched the results load, expecting maybe a few LinkedIn profiles, some company directories. What she got was pages upon pages of results. Adrian Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Global Development, named Forbes 30 under 30. Billionaire property mogul Adrian Blackwood expands empire to Asia. Adrian Blackwood, 31, Britain's most eligible bachelor after highly publicized engagement ends. Emma's stomach dropped. She clicked on image results, and there he was, dozens of photos of Adrian at charity galas, ribbon cuttings, business conferences. Always in impeccable suits, always with that same composed expression she'd seen crack last night into something raw and real. Lily, Emma said faintly, He's actually a billionaire. What? Her sister shrieked. Emma, you're going on a date with an actual billionaire. How is this your life? I don't know, Emma admitted, scrolling through images. There were photos of Adrian with celebrities, politicians, royalty. And then she found the engagement photos, Adrian in a tuxedo, arm around a stunning blonde woman in a wedding gown. The caption read, Blackwood Montgomery wedding called off. Sources cite irreconcilable differences. Victoria, Emma thought. The fiancé who'd wanted the lifestyle, not the man. Emma, you still there? Yeah, Emma said softly. I'm here. Lily, what am I doing? This man lives in a completely different world. Last night was probably just, I don't know, charity. He felt sorry for me. Did he act like he felt sorry for you? Lily's voice was sharp. Or did he act like a man who was interested? Emma thought about the way Adrian had looked at her, the intensity in his eyes when he'd said he wanted to see her again. Interested, she admitted quietly. Then stop overthinking it, Lily commanded. Marcus spent 2 years making you feel small and invisible. If this Adrian person makes you feel seen, if he shows up when he says he will and treats you with respect, then who cares how much money he has? Go to dinner. Wear something gorgeous. See where this goes. What if I get hurt? The question came out small, vulnerable. Lily's voice softened. You were already hurt. Marcus hurt you over and over, and you stayed because you were afraid of being alone. Maybe it's time to be afraid of something else, like missing out on something real because you're too scared to try. The words landed like a punch, knocking the air from Emma's lungs, because Lily was right. She'd been so afraid of ending up alone that she'd accepted loneliness within a relationship. What was the point of that? Okay, Emma said, drawing a deep breath. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to dinner with a billionaire and not spiral about all the ways it could go wrong. That's my girl, Lily said warmly. Now go find something amazing to wear and call me tomorrow with every single detail. And Emma, break up with Marcus, officially. Don't let him think he still has a claim on you. After they hung up, Emma sat on her bed for a long moment, phone in her lap. Then, decisively, she opened her messages and found Marcus's thread. Emma, we need to talk, but not this weekend. I think we both know this hasn't been working for a while. I wish you the best, but I can't do this anymore. She hit send before she could reconsider, then immediately blocked his number. Her hands shook, adrenaline flooding her system. 2 years ended with a text message. Marcus would probably say it was cowardly. But Emma thought it was fitting. He'd treated their relationship with the same casual disregard. Why did he deserve more than she'd received? Liberation felt like this, apparently. Terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Now, to find something to wear for a date with a billionaire. By the time 7 o'clock rolled around, Emma had tried on half her closet and settled on a simple but elegant navy dress with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt. She de-paired it with low heels, comfortable, as Adrian had suggested, and kept her jewelry minimal, small gold hoops and her grandmother's delicate chain necklace. Her hair, freshly washed and dried, fell in soft waves past her shoulders. Her makeup was understated, a touch of mascara, some lip gloss, a hint of blush. She looked like herself, only polished, and for once she didn't feel the need to hide behind layers of artifice. At 6:58, there was a knock on her door. Emma's heart leapt into her throat. She grabbed her purse, took one last steadying breath, and opened the door. Adrian stood in the hallway looking impossibly handsome in dark jeans and a black sweater that clung to his shoulders in ways that should be illegal. His hair was slightly mussed, as if he'd run his hands through it, and when he saw her, his entire face lit up. Emma, he said, and his voice was warm with appreciation. You look beautiful. So do you, Emma blurted, then felt her face heat. I mean handsome, you look handsome. Adrian's smile widened, becoming something boyish and delighted. Thank you. Are you ready? Emma nodded and stepped out, locking her door with fingers that trembled slightly. When she turned back, Adrian offered his arm with the same old-fashioned courtesy he'd shown the night before. Emma took it, feeling the solid warmth of him through the soft cashmere of his sweater. They walked down to the street where James waited with the car. The driver greeted Emma with a warm smile and a respectful nod. "Good evening, Miss Clark. Lovely to see you again." "You too, James," Emma said, genuinely pleased. She liked that Adrian had a driver he clearly respected, that James seemed to care about his employer rather than simply work for him. Once they were settled in the back seat, Adrian turned to her with an expression that was part excitement, part nervousness. "I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of planning something a bit unconventional." "Unconventional how?" Emma asked, curious. "You'll see," Adrian's eyes danced with mischief. "Trust me." Emma thought about Lily's words, about being brave, about letting herself be seen and valued. "Yes," she said simply, "I trust you." The smile Adrian gave her in response was brilliant enough to light the entire city. They drove through downtown, then beyond it, into areas Emma rarely visited. The buildings grew sparser, replaced by trees and open spaces. Finally, James pulled up to what looked like a private airfield. Emma's eyes widened. "Adrian, what?" "I wanted to show you something," Adrian said, helping her out of the car. "A place that's important to me, but it's not here in the city." He hesitated, suddenly looking uncertain, an expression Emma hadn't seen on his confident face before. "If you're uncomfortable with this, we can absolutely do something else. I don't want you to feel pressured or—" "Where are we going?" Emma interrupted gently. Adrian met her eyes. "There's a house about an hour north of here overlooking the ocean. It was my grandfather's, the only place I've ever felt truly at peace. I hoped we could have dinner there. James would stay with the plane, we'd have complete privacy. But Emma, if this is too much, too fast, just say the word and we'll turn around right now." Emma's heart thundered in her chest. This was crazy. She should say no, should insist on something public and safe. But looking at Adrian's face, seeing the vulnerability there, the genuine hope that she'd say yes, Emma found she didn't want safe. "I'd love to see it," she said softly. The relief that washed over Adrian's features was palpable. He took her hand and squeezed gently. "Thank you for trusting me." The plane was small but luxurious, a private jet with cream leather seats and polished wood accents. A pilot greeted them professionally, and within minutes they were taxiing down the runway. Emma gripped the armrest as they lifted off, and Adrian's hand covered hers, warm and reassuring. "Nervous flyer?" he asked gently. "First time in a private jet," Emma admitted. "First time in any plane that wasn't crammed with 300 other people, actually." Adrian's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "I forget sometimes how unusual this is. Private jets, drivers, houses scattered around the world, it's been my normal for so long." He paused. "But being with you makes me see it differently, makes me want to share it, not just inhabit it." Emma squeezed his hand. "Tell me about this house we're going to." Adrian's face softened with memory. "My grandfather built it with his own hands after World War II. He was a carpenter, not wealthy, nothing like what my father turned the family business into. But he had this dream of a place where the family could gather, where we could be together away from the world." He smiled. "Some of my best childhood memories are there. My grandmother teaching me to cook in that kitchen. My grandfather showing me how to tie fishing knots on the dock. My mother reading to me on the porch while the waves crashed below." "It sounds perfect," Emma said softly. "It is. It's the only place that's still mine, untouched by business or expectations, or—" He stopped. "Sorry, I'm getting maudlin." "No," Emma said firmly. "You're being real, that's different." Adrian looked at her for a long moment, something intense and unreadable in his gray eyes. Then he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, just as he had the night before. "You're extraordinary, Emma Clark. I hope you know that." Emma's cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away. "You make me feel extraordinary, that's a gift." The flight passed in easy conversation. Adrian asked more about her work, her family, her dreams. Emma found herself telling him things she'd never shared with Marcus, how she wanted to write someday, but was too afraid to try. How she loved her sister fiercely, but sometimes felt like she'd never measure up to Lily's bold confidence. how she'd lost her father when she was 12 and sometimes still felt that absence like a phantom limb. Adrian listened to all of it with complete attention, asking thoughtful questions, sharing his own losses. His father's death 5 years ago, the weight of inheriting an empire he wasn't sure he wanted, the loneliness of being surrounded by people who wanted things from him but rarely wanted him. By the time they landed, Emma felt like she'd known Adrian for years instead of a day. The easy intimacy between them should have been impossible, but somehow it was. Somehow it felt like the most natural thing in the world. A car was waiting at the small airstrip, an older model Range Rover, practical rather than flashy. Adrian drove this time, navigating the winding coastal road with practiced ease. The sun was setting, painting the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. And then they crested a hill, and Emma gasped. The house was exactly as Adrian had described, modest but beautiful, a weathered Cape Cod-style building with a wraparound porch and large windows facing the sea. It sat on a cliff overlooking the water, surrounded by wild grasses and scrub trees bent by constant wind. The sunset painted everything in warm light, making the house glow like something out of a dream. Adrian, Emma breathed, "It's perfect." He smiled, pleasure and relief mixing in his expression. "I'm glad you think so. Come on, I'll give you the tour." Inside, the house was cozy and lived in, with worn hardwood floors and furniture that prioritized comfort over style. The living room had a stone fireplace and bookshelves crammed with paperbacks. The kitchen was small but charming, with blue-painted cabinets and a window over the sink that framed the ocean view. "No staff," Adrian explained as he led her through. "No chefs or housekeepers or any of that, just me whenever I can steal a few days away from London." He glanced at her almost shyly. "I hope you don't mind. I thought we could cook together." Emma's heart swelled. After a lifetime of fancy restaurants and private jets, this billionaire wanted to cook dinner with her in his grandfather's kitchen. "I'd love that." They made pasta together, a simple carbonara that Adrian prepared with the easy confidence of someone who'd made it 100 times. Emma chopped vegetables for a salad, and they talked and laughed and moved around each other in the small kitchen like they'd been doing this for years. When dinner was ready, they carried their plates out to the porch. The sun had fully set now, leaving the sky awash in deep blues and purples. Stars were beginning to emerge, more than Emma had ever seen in the city. The sound of waves crashing against the rocks below was hypnotic, eternal. "This is incredible," Emma said softly. "Thank you for bringing me here." Adrian was quiet for a moment, his profile limned in starlight. When he spoke, his voice was serious. "I've never brought anyone here before, not Victoria, not any of the women I've dated. This place has always been sacred, I suppose. Mine." Emma's breath caught. "Then why?" "Because you're different." Adrian turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his eyes made her shiver. "From the moment I saw you standing in that rain, something in me recognized something in you. I can't explain it rationally. But Emma, I wanted you here, wanted to share this with you. Wanted you to see the real me, not the billionaire or the CEO or any of the masks I wear. Just me." Emma set down her fork with trembling hands. "I see you," she whispered. "Adrian, I see you." He moved then, closing the distance between them on the porch, his hand coming up to cup her face. His thumb traced the curve of her cheekbone, and Emma's eyes fluttered closed at the gentleness of the touch. "May I kiss you?" Adrian asked, his voice rough with restraint. Emma's eyes opened. "Yes," she breathed, "please, yes." Adrian's kiss was everything Marcus's had never been, tender but passionate, controlled but desperate, respectful but consuming. He kissed her like she was precious, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. His hand threaded through her hair while the other settled at the small of her back, pulling her closer. Emma melted into him, her hands fisting in his sweater, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She'd been kissed before, but never like this. Never with this combination of gentleness and hunger, never with the sense that the person holding her actually saw her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "Emma," he said, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. I know this is fast, I know we barely know each other, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about you for a second since last night. Neither have I, Emma admitted, her voice shaky. Adrian pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. I have to return to London in 2 weeks. That's not long, but... Then let's make it count, Emma interrupted. She didn't know where the bravery came from, but she couldn't let fear steal this from her. Not again. 2 weeks to see where this goes, no expectations beyond that, just let's be here now. Adrian's smile was slow and devastating. Here now, he repeated. I can do that. He kissed her again, softer this time, then pulled her against his chest. Stay tonight, not, he stopped, flustered. I mean, stay in one of the guest rooms, watch the sunrise with me tomorrow. I want more time with you, Emma, as much as you'll give me. Emma should say no, should be practical, should protect her heart. But standing in Adrian's arms with the ocean crashing below and stars wheeling overhead, she found she didn't want to be practical. Okay, she said, I'll stay. The next morning, Emma woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the sound of waves beyond. For a moment she panicked, disoriented, then memory flooded back. The house, the dinner, the kiss, Adrian. She was still fully dressed in the clothes from the night before, lying on top of the covers in a guest room decorated in soft blues and whites. After dinner, Adrian had shown her here with a chaste kiss goodnight and a promise to make breakfast. Emma had barely slept, too aware of him in a room down the hall, too filled with nervous energy to relax. But now, in the golden morning light, everything felt softer, real. Emma found the adjoining bathroom and splashed water on her face, finger-combed her hair. She looked rumpled but happy, her eyes bright, her cheeks flushed. She looked like a woman who'd been kissed thoroughly and wanted to be kissed again. Downstairs, she followed the smell of coffee and found Adrian in the kitchen, barefoot in jeans and a soft gray t-shirt, his hair still mussed from sleep. He was flipping pancakes with easy competence, and when he heard her footsteps, he turned with a smile that made her stomach flip. Good morning, he said warmly. Coffee, I made it strong, but I have milk if you prefer it lighter. Strong is perfect, Emma said, accepting the mug he poured for her. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, and the spark that shot through her was electric. They ate breakfast on the porch again, watching the morning sun turn the ocean silver. Adrian had made a mountain of pancakes with fresh berries, and they ate in comfortable silence punctuated by easy conversation, the kind of morning that felt domestic and right in a way Emma had never experienced. I could get used to this, she admitted softly. Adrian's hand found hers across the table. So could I. After breakfast, they walked the beach below the house, shoes abandoned at the base of the cliff path. The sand was cold and damp under Emma's feet, the wind tangling her hair. Adrian held her hand loosely, letting her explore tide pools and collect smooth stones worn by centuries of waves. What was Victoria like? Emma asked suddenly, surprising herself with the question. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Beautiful, he said finally, polished, perfect in all the ways that matter to society. He paused. And empty, at least with me. She wanted the life I could give her, but she never wanted to know who I actually was beneath the name and the money. That must have been lonely, Emma said softly. It was, I think that's why I stayed so long. I kept hoping if I just tried harder, loved her better, she'd see me. But some people are incapable of seeing past surfaces. He squeezed Emma's hand. You're not like that. How do you know? Emma challenged gently. You barely know me. Adrian stopped walking and turned to face her, the morning sun catching the gray blue of his eyes. Because you stood in the rain waiting for someone who didn't deserve you. Because you opened up to a stranger about your hurt instead of hiding behind pride. Because you're here now, taking a risk on something uncertain instead of playing it safe. He cupped her face gently. You're brave, Emma, braver than you know. Emma's eyes stung with unexpected tears. I don't feel brave, I feel terrified. Bravery isn't the absence of fear, Adrian said. It's doing the thing that scares you anyway, and you're doing that with me. He kissed her then, slow and deep, tasting of coffee and morning and promise. Emma melted into him, letting herself feel everything without trying to protect herself. When they broke apart, she rested her head against his chest and listened to the steady thump of his heart. "I broke up with Marcus," she said quietly. She felt Adrian's sharp intake of breath. "When?" "Yesterday, after you texted, after Lily told me I needed to stop being afraid of being alone." Emma pulled back to look up at him. "I thought I should tell you, in case you thought, I don't know, that I was using you or—" "Emma," Adrian's voice was firm, "I never thought that, but I'm glad you told me." He hesitated. "Was it hard?" "Surprisingly, no," Emma admitted. "It was like realizing I'd been carrying weight I didn't need to anymore. Lighter, you know." Adrian's smile was slight but genuine. "I do know. That's exactly how I felt when I ended things with Victoria." They walked back to the house hand in hand, a new ease between them now that there were no secrets. The rest of the day unfolded like a dream, more conversation, a lunch of sandwiches eaten on the porch, an afternoon nap where Emma finally slept deeply, curled in the guest bed with the windows open to ocean air. When she woke, Adrian was sitting in the chair by the window, reading a worn paperback. He looked up when she stirred, and the tenderness in his expression made Emma's heart squeeze. "Good nap?" he asked. "The best," Emma said honestly. "What are you reading?" Adrian showed her the cover, an old mystery novel, pages yellowed. "My grandfather's favorite. He must have read it a dozen times. I find it comforting, seeing his notes in the margins, knowing he held these exact pages." Emma sat up, pushing hair out of her face. "Do you miss him?" "Every day," Adrian said quietly. "He died when I was 15, right before my father really built the company into what it is now. Sometimes I wonder what he would think of it all, the wealth, the power, the empire." He smiled sadly. "I think he'd tell me to remember what actually matters." "And what's that?" Emma asked softly. Adrian set down the book and crossed to the bed, sitting on the edge. "Connection, love, purpose beyond profit." He took her hand. "You, Emma, this, right now, that's what matters." Emma's breath caught. It was too soon for this, for the intensity crackling between them. But somehow it didn't feel too soon. It felt inevitable, like they'd been moving toward this moment since he'd stopped in the rain. "Kiss me again," she whispered. Adrian did, and this time neither of them pulled away. They stayed at the house for the entire weekend, lost in their own world. Adrian showed Emma his grandfather's workshop, still full of woodworking tools and half-finished projects. They cooked together, making increasingly ambitious meals that filled the house with the smells of garlic and herbs. They talked for hours on the porch about everything and nothing, childhoods and dreams, fears and hopes, the small details that made up a life. And they kissed, long, slow kisses that left Emma dizzy, urgent kisses when conversation gave way to need. Tender kisses in the morning light and passionate kisses under the stars. Sunday evening, as they drove back to the airstrip, Emma felt reality closing back in. Tomorrow she'd return to work, to her regular life. Adrian would go back to his meetings and acquisitions. This magical bubble would pop. "What are you thinking?" Adrian asked, glancing at her as he drove. Emma sighed, "That I don't want this weekend to end." "Neither do I." Adrian's hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. "But Emma, this doesn't have to end. I'm here for 2 more weeks. Let me take you to dinner every night. Let me steal you away for afternoons when you can manage it. Let me show you that this, us, can exist outside of that house." "You're leaving in 2 weeks," Emma said softly, the first time she'd let herself acknowledge the deadline aloud. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "I am, but Emma, I travel constantly for work. London is my base, but I'm rarely there for more than a week at a time. We can figure this out." "Can we?" Emma interrupted, her voice sharper than intended. "Adrian, you live in a completely different world, private jets and billion-dollar deals and none of it means anything without someone to share it with," Adrian cut in firmly. He pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face her fully. "Emma, I know this is complicated. I know the logistics are a nightmare, but I haven't felt this way about anyone in my entire life. When I'm with you, I feel like myself, not the CEO, not the heir to the empire, just Adrian. and that's worth fighting for, don't you think? Emma's eyes stung. I'm scared, she admitted. I'm scared of caring about you and then watching you fly away. I'm scared of not being enough for your life. I'm scared of getting hurt again. Adrian cupped her face in both hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. I'm scared too, he said quietly. I'm terrified that I'll screw this up, that I'll let my work consume me the way it always does, that I'll wake up one day and realize I chose the empire over you. But Emma, not trying, that scares me more than any of those things. A tear slipped down Emma's cheek. Adrian brushed it away with his thumb. Give me these 2 weeks, he said. Let me prove that this can work, and then, he paused, jaw tightening. Then we'll figure out what comes next, together, okay? Emma wanted to protect herself, wanted to be smart and cautious. But looking into Adrian's eyes, seeing his own fear reflected back at her, she found she couldn't say no. Okay, she whispered, 2 weeks. Adrian kissed her then, deep and thorough, pouring everything he couldn't say into the press of his mouth against hers. When he pulled back, both of them were breathing hard. 2 weeks, he echoed. And Emma, I'm going to make them count. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and deepening connection. Adrian kept his promise. Every evening he was there, picking Emma up from work or meeting her for dinner. They explored the city like tourists, visiting museums Emma had never made time for, eating at hole-in-the-wall restaurants Adrian would never have found on his own. He fit into her life with surprising ease. He charmed Lily over dinner, impressing her with his genuine interest in her legal career. He won over Emma's mother during a Sunday brunch, listening attentively to her stories and asking thoughtful questions about her work as a teacher. I like him, Lily told Emma afterward, when they'd escaped to the kitchen for a moment alone. He looks at you like you hung the moon. Emma's cheeks flushed. It's still early, we're still figuring things out. He flew you to his grandfather's house on your second date. The man is in deep. Lily's expression turned serious. But what happens when he leaves? It was the question Emma had been avoiding, the countdown that ticked in the back of her mind with every passing day. She didn't have an answer, and Lily didn't push. Adrian, for his part, never mentioned the deadline. He lived in the present with her, giving her his full attention whenever they were together. He learned that she took her coffee with honey instead of sugar, that she was allergic to shellfish, that she'd always wanted to learn to sail. Small details he remembered and treasured. In the quiet moments, though, Emma caught him watching her with an expression that was almost grief, as if he was already mourning their separation. On the last Friday before Adrian's scheduled return to London, he surprised her. Emma had expected dinner as usual, but when James picked her up from work, Adrian wasn't in the car. Mr. Blackwood asked me to bring you to the airport, Miss Clark, James explained. He said to pack a bag for the weekend. Emma's heart stuttered. The airport? James's smile was knowing. You'll see. By now, Emma had learned not to question Adrian's surprises. She quickly threw some clothes into a bag, including the dress she'd worn on their first date. It felt significant somehow, circular. At the airport, Adrian was waiting by the plane, pacing slightly, uncharacteristically nervous. When he saw her, relief washed over his features. You came, he said, as if there'd been any doubt. You're very hard to say no to, Emma teased, but her voice was soft. Adrian closed the distance between them and kissed her forehead. I wanted one more weekend, just us before, he trailed off, jaw tightening. Before you leave, Emma finished quietly. Yes, Adrian's hands came up to frame her face, his gray eyes intense. Emma, I need you to know something before we go. These past 2 weeks have been the best of my life. You make me want to be better, to build a life instead of just an empire. And I... Don't, Emma interrupted, pressing her fingers to his lips. Don't say anything you'll regret when you're back in London. Let's just have this weekend, okay? Let's not think about Monday. Adrian kissed her fingers, then her palm, then pulled her against his chest. Okay, he murmured into her hair. This weekend and nothing else. They flew to Paris. Emma had never been to Europe, had never imagined she'd see the Eiffel Tower lit up at night or walk along the Seine at dawn. Adrian showed her his Paris, not the tourist destinations, but the quiet bookstores and corner cafes, the hidden courtyards and tiny galleries that never made it into guidebooks. They ate croissants for breakfast and drank wine with lunch and kissed on bridges as the city moved around them. They made love for the first time in a hotel room overlooking the river, slow and tender and intense, both of them knowing without saying it that this was goodbye masquerading as hello. Sunday morning, lying in tangled sheets with sunlight streaming through tall windows, Adrian finally broke the silence they'd been maintaining. "Come with me," he said quietly. Emma, who'd been tracing patterns on his chest, froze. "What?" Adrian caught her hand, pressing it over his heart. "To London. Come with me. I know it's insane. I know we've only known each other 2 weeks, but Emma, I can't imagine going back without you." Emma's throat tightened. "Adrian, I have a job, a life. I can't just—" "You can work remotely or find a position with one of the publishing houses in London. I know people who could help." Adrian sat up, pulling her with him, his expression desperate. "I have a flat in Kensington, plenty of space. You wouldn't have to give up anything, you'd just be there, with me." "I'd be giving up everything," Emma said, her voice breaking. "My sister, my mother, my friends, my independence. Adrian, if I follow you to London, I become the girlfriend who gave up her life for a man. And what happens when this ends? When the newness wears off and you realize I don't fit into your world?" "That won't happen," Adrian said fiercely. "You can't know that." Emma pulled away, wrapping the sheet around herself. "Adrian, this has been magical. You've been incredible. But we've been living in a bubble, stolen weekends and perfect dates. Real life is different. Real life is compromise and sacrifice and—" "And I'm willing to do all of that," Adrian interrupted. "Emma, I'm in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, crystalline and terrifying. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Please don't say that." "Why not? It's true." Adrian's voice was rough with emotion. "I fell in love with you standing in the rain. I've been falling deeper every day since, and if you're not ready to hear it, I can wait. But Emma, don't ask me to pretend I feel anything less." Emma was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "I love you too," she choked out. "But Adrian, love isn't enough. My mother loved my father desperately, and then he died, and she spent years putting herself back together. Loving someone doesn't protect you from loss, and I can't. I can't follow you across the ocean and lose myself in the process." Adrian looked stricken. "You wouldn't be losing yourself, you'd be choosing us." "Would I?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Or would I be choosing you and hoping that's enough? Adrian, I've spent my whole life trying to be enough for people who didn't value me. With Marcus, with my family, with everyone. You make me feel seen and valued in ways I never have before. But if I give up my entire life to follow you, eventually I'll resent it. And then I'll resent you. And this beautiful thing we have will turn into something ugly." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Adrian spoke, his voice hollow. "So this is it? We just end?" "I don't want to end," Emma said desperately. "But I don't see how this works. You're leaving tomorrow. Your life is in London, mine is here. Long distance might work for a while, but eventually—" "Eventually one of us gives up something," Adrian finished bitterly. "And you've decided it should be you, but you're not willing to do it." "That's not fair," Emma protested. "Isn't it?" Adrian's eyes were hard now, hurt turning to anger. "You say you love me, but you won't even consider trying to make this work. You're so convinced you'll lose yourself that you won't take the risk. And you're so used to getting what you want that you can't understand why I won't just uproot my entire life." Emma shot back. They stared at each other, both breathing hard, the beautiful weekend shattered around them. "I should go," Emma said finally, her voice small. "I should pack and go home." Adrian's face crumpled. "Emma—" "Please," she whispered, "please don't make this harder." So Adrian called James, arranged for a car to take Emma to the airport, a commercial flight back home. They barely spoke as she gathered her things, the silence heavy with all the things they couldn't say. At the hotel room door, Emma turned back. Adrian stood by the window, silhouetted against the Paris skyline, looking more alone than anyone had a right to be. "I'm sorry," she said, "for not being brave enough." Adrian didn't turn around. "You're the bravest person I know, Emma Clark. That's what makes this so hard." Emma left, tears streaming down her face, her heart cracking with every step away from him. 6 months later, Emma stared at her laptop screen, reading the same sentence for the third time without comprehension. Around her, the coffee shop buzzed with late afternoon energy, students studying, writers typing, friends laughing over lattes. But Emma felt disconnected from it all, trapped in the grief that had become her constant companion. 6 months since Paris. 6 months since she'd walked away from Adrian Blackwood and the life he'd offered. 6 months of telling herself she'd made the right choice. She was lying. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "Drinks tonight? You need to get out of your head." Emma started to type a refusal, then stopped. Her sister was right. She'd been hiding, drowning in work and avoiding anything that might remind her of Adrian, which was everything. The rain made her think of him, fancy restaurants, the smell of expensive cologne. The city itself had become a minefield of memories. She texted back, "Okay, 7 p.m. As she packed up her laptop, a shadow fell across her table. "This seat taken." Emma's head jerked up and her heart stopped. Adrian stood there, rumpled from travel in jeans and a sweater, his hair longer than she remembered, eyes tired but bright. Real. Here. "What?" Emma couldn't form words. "I've been an idiot," Adrian said in a rush. 6 months, Emma, 6 months I've been trying to get over you, trying to tell myself you were right, that we were impossible. And I can't. I can't stop thinking about you, can't stop missing you, can't stop loving you." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Adrian." "Let me finish," he said desperately. "You were right about everything. I was asking you to give up your life for mine, and that wasn't fair. But Emma, I've spent 6 months figuring out how to do this differently. I bought a building downtown. I'm opening a U.S. headquarters here. I'll be in the city half the time, London the other half. I can't give up my company, but I can structure my life differently." Emma stared at him, unable to process what he was saying. Adrian dropped to his knees beside her table, taking her hands. "I'm not asking you to follow me anymore. I'm asking if I can meet you halfway. Build a life that works for both of us. No sacrifices, no grand gestures, just two people who love each other figuring it out day by day." "You restructured your entire company," Emma said faintly. "For me." "For us," Adrian corrected. "Because you were right. Love isn't enough if it costs someone their identity. I want you as you are, Emma, living your life, pursuing your dreams. I just want to be part of that life if you'll have me." Emma's tears were falling freely now. "I've been miserable without you." "Then let's stop being miserable," Adrian said simply. "Let's try again, but better this time, smarter, as equals building something together instead of one person following the other." Emma pulled her hands free and threw her arms around his neck. Adrian caught her, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe, his face buried in her hair. "Yes," Emma whispered. "Yes, let's try again." Adrian pulled back just enough to kiss her, deep and thorough and full of 6 months of longing. Around them, the coffee shop applauded, but Emma barely heard it. She was too busy kissing the man who'd stopped in the rain, who'd shown her what it meant to be valued, who'd restructured his life to meet her halfway. When they finally broke apart, Adrian cupped her face gently. "I love you, Emma Clark, and I'm going to spend every day proving you made the right choice." "I love you too," Emma said, smiling through her tears. "And Adrian, thank you for not giving up on me, on us." "Never," Adrian promised. "No one should treat you like you're anything less than extraordinary. Not Marcus, not anyone, not even me. So I'm going to spend the rest of my life showing you exactly how extraordinary you are." And he did.